Information and Communication Technologies, or ICT, has linked millions of people around the world through the wonder of computers. Even though ICT is extensively utilized in the many aspects of our daily lives, nowadays it has remained inaccessible to persons with disabilities. They were virtually left in the dark, shut off the resounding noises of progress and development, the digital divide.
Before, the work is really it takes long time. Like for example, when I'm still studying, we need to just use a device. That's what we are calling brailler. It's just like a typewriter, wherein we will type all the documents, and then in that typewriter, it's just, for example, we are 5 students in one room who need a braille copy of it. So we need to produce it one at a time.
In the Philippines, accessibility has become a great challenge among ICT stakeholders in order to enable persons with disabilities to gain equal opportunities in the full and effective exercise of human rights. However, there was a lack of awareness among the public, even stakeholders, on accessibility as applied to the disability sector. We needed to get updates and information from neighbors or similar organizations locally and internationally concerning specific needs of persons with disabilities on ICT. In 2003, Inter-Regional Seminar and Regional Demonstration Workshop on Accessible ICT and Persons with Disabilities was organized by the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs in partnership with the Department of Social Welfare and Development and National Council for Disability Affairs in order to spearhead the program of Internet accessibility for persons with disabilities. Based on the collaborative efforts, the Manila Declaration on Accessible Information and Communication Technologies and Manila Design Recommendations on Accessible Information and Communication Technologies were adopted at the UN level.
Because of that Manila Declaration, it opened the doors for persons with disabilities to engage themselves in this kind of endeavor. There are special programs that are designed for them. That is why in the Philippines, we can say that it's a booming industry within the sector of persons with disabilities.
However, a question was raised on how this declaration would impact the daily lives of persons with disabilities, particularly from the perspective of accessibility. One factor that triggered putting ICT into practice was the training from the perspective of DAISY, or the Digital Accessible Information System and Web-Based Networking, by the Asia Pacific Development Center on Disability in Bangkok, Thailand.
Using the computer on how the blind use it. So without using the mouse, that's using shortcut keys or keyboard keys. So we learned the blind way of learning the computer.
The highlight was an action plan that would work so that we could use accessible ICT to generate jobs here in the country. We were challenged to think of other partners who we haven't tapped, like the networks and the media. We have had very good projects, but the public doesn't know.
One focus in the action plan was to sensitize the public, including web designers, on accessible ICT for persons with disabilities. It is true that at first, the ICT subcommittee under NCDA was not always actively working with all the stakeholders from government agencies, business sectors, and NGOs. But the commitment of key stakeholders activated the ICT subcommittee to collaborate among different agencies.
Even before talking to these government agencies, we met among ourselves, the leaders of the sector, and we agreed on one particular statement. We had one voice, and we also knew how to solve our problems. We were not talking only about issues,
but we made sure that side by side with issues, we would also be presenting our recommendations to the government agency. In 2005, with support and funding from DSWD and NCDA, workshop series for website designers was conducted in cooperation with NCDA, the National Computer Center, and APCD. Mr. Leo Valdez from Vision Office provide technical assistance as the main resource person.
Before, I do not understand what accessibility means. But when I learned about it, I started to understand about some changes that I need to make on my design that would be beneficial to other persons with disabilities. Before, I learned about how to design websites, but without accessibility. But now I need to make some changes. Before, I'm very much fond of using flash animation, but now I stopped using it primarily because of accessibility, in order for those other people with disability to understand my designs.
Aside from what I've learned when I was studying, when I attended the workshop, I realized that there are lots of things that I can do to help those people in terms of accessibility, so that my fellow visually impaired or PWDs can also access the internet if the websites are already accessible.
An outcome of this workshop series was a 4-point criteria of minimum requirements for an accessible website. As an incentive, NCDA, NCC, and also the UN-awarded PWD-friendly websites if they complied with the standards. The first NGO to be awarded was Achieve.
I was so happy, but I did not expect it. Because among those people from webmasters from different government and non-government organizations, why that the award was given to us.
I can see through computer that I can, predict better because of the availability of information. The availability, accessibility of information, especially in the internet, I can predict the future, the direction of blind people.
ICT stakeholders continued a workshop series for website designers throughout the Philippines. Most participants gathered in one place to update and monitor what happened. With the funding from DSWD and NCDA, a national ICT workshop was organized as well. While Mr. Leo Valdez from Vision Office contributed as a resource person, APCD also mobilized a resource person to share updates in the Asia-Pacific region.
Before, I do not have, and I wasn't able to understand the workings of other disabled people, but now I realize about there are some other disabled people that needs accessibility and that needs assistance through accessibility. I do some summary because there is some what we call a deaf culture wherein there is you need to summarize and to paraphrase everything in order for them to understand, or to completely understand. Or you have to, when you need to put some words, you have to make some drawing and design in order for them to understand clearly. And it will be easier for them to understand.
Assuming, for example, that there is no screen reader at all. So, to just imagine a college student like me having a computer course that needs most of the time research, and I need to ask the assistance of someone in order for me to click a particular link, for example, or type in a particular address. With this ICT thing, blind is now independent when it comes to using computer.
As an outcome of this workshop series and collaborative efforts between the government and NGOs, web designers with ICT and web accessibility experts banded together and formed the Philippine Web Accessibility Group, or PWAG. In collaboration with government agencies such as DSWD, NCDA, and NCC, PWAG has been tasked to implement ICT accessibility programs in the Philippines.
Accessibility is fairly new to the Philippines. So after the 2003 to 2004 and the rest of the workshops, during that, nobody knows about accessibility. Nobody knows about the concerns of other disabled people. Nobody knows about the concern of people who are deprived of information. So everybody is concerned mostly on the aesthetic side of designing. So PWAG is more focused on the content, on how this content to be disseminated to people aside from the mainstream people, especially those who are disabled or those who are discriminated.
The good impact of ICT initiatives has been demonstrated in several ways. For example, good practices on ICT were publicly broadcasted on TV. Moreover, in 2007 at the UN level, the initiatives and collaboration on ICT in the Philippines was cited as the best practice in the Asia-Pacific region.
One thing we picked up is to really involve the sectors that were not there before. Number one, the business sector, the media, and NGOs with the grassroots connections. And yes, we had and also the involvement of the persons with disabilities themselves to be the champions.
There has been a spin-off from all the hard work collaborating with the government and NGOs. Further cooperation on disability. For instance, the Department of Foreign Affairs has employed more than 10 deaf encoders.
I'm very happy working here. I'm very happy communicating with hearing people, and most of the time I teach them signs, and then I enjoy teasing with them, making fun of them. Of course, I'm happy here working as an encoder, of course, for the passport. I'm also happy meeting other people and then helping them getting their passports.
With ICT skills, these deaf encoders have done excellent work and were cited as model employees during the National Disability Prevention and Rehabilitation Week celebration in 2008. The Manila Declaration, a non-binding document, acts as a bridge to the binding UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, or the CRPD, notably paragraphs G and H, Article 9. The UNCRPD has been ratified by our government on April 15, 2008. Even though the Philippines is committed to the rights of persons with disabilities to have access to ICT, realistically, the day has not yet come when all persons with disabilities have access to ICT. There is a long way to go.